Okay, go ahead.
Nana Bourgeois, Wishkabiji Nabi Ikwe Indigenous cause. My indigenous name means to be sweet like the water woman in Ojibwe Moan, and I'm an enrolled member of the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa. My government name is Christy Goulet, and like the introduction said, I am the executive director of Indigenous Legacy, which was started 2.5 years ago. And when I say we, I work closely with another nonprofit called Cultural Diversity Resources. We actually just won Nonprofit of the Year last year in the Moorhead community for the work that we do at empowering low income families. And when Yoksim Gutnaradny, who is the executive director of Cultural Diversity Resources, when her and I were meeting one day, God is amazing. I had been in nursing for 10 years and I could no longer. I woke up one day and my knee was swollen, and the doctor's like, double knee replacement. And I'm like, well, done with that stuff. Now what do I do? And Yoke Sim said to me, your passion for your culture and your people is where you need to keep putting your energy. And she said, I will mentor you and we will get you started on learning how to write grants and all the paperwork that came along with that. And from there, I mentored for a year and a half under Yoke Sim, learning how to like fundamentally run a nonprofit before I started taking on the clients that we have today. And that was a really amazing collaboration because cultural diversity resources, my mentor some days is literally emotionally on the edge of a breakdown because they hear ice being said, and they're worried, are these people going to come in and swoop us out of our homes or out of our businesses, and what is that going to look like in the future of America? And I tell her, not over my dead body, they're not, because we still have treaty rights, we still have sovereign rights. I actually have dual citizenship between the United States and Canada. My grandparents and my parents both came out of Canada, and we settled 7 miles on the Canadian border and we're on a buffalo hunt. And the Chimokamans or Western people came by and they were like, "Oh, you're in North Dakota," and or Dakota Territory at the time. We're like, "We don't know what that means. We just know there's buffalo." And they said, "Well, you're going to be United States citizens. We're going to enroll you at the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa." And so both sets of my grandparents are enrolled at Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa, but I actually have dual citizenship, which is incredibly important right now when we look at the strides that the Indigenous people are making in Canada as well. There's a lot of resistance and there's a lot of solidarity for the policies and procedures that the United States government had used in order to colonialize and use Catholicism to conquer the Indigenous peoples. And one of the things that I think frustrates those individuals who think that way the most are that we are still a free people, that we did survive ethnic cleansing and that we did survive genocide, and that the policies that were put in place, and I can speak firsthand because my grandmother on my mom's side was forcibly taken away from my grandparents as a seventh grader in Walhalla, North Dakota, and was put at the boarding school in Fort Totten, North Dakota, where she came in as a seventh grader and exited as a 12th grader. And a lot of people wonder, why Indigenous populations. I I want to use comparison sometimes. When you look at Western society and we're taught that rich is by, how nice your jewelry is, how nice of a car you drive, how nice of clothes you wear, how nice of a car you have, you're rich. Indigenous people think circular, we don't think linear. And in being rich in our culture is rich in relationships. And how do you build or mend healthy relationships that are going to transcend over generation to generation so that we keep our teachings intact, because I can't change the teachings of my ancestors because there was historical trauma and genocide and ethnic cleansing. We ratify that in oral storytelling of how we use persistence and how we use self-defense and how we use the resources that are given to us to navigate tumultuous times that this country has gone through, like it is going through right now. Again, we're in the time of great transition. I had a Netflix special released about 3 weeks ago, and it was a real bummer that I couldn't make it to the premiere of the film release because we had tornadoes that came through and like killed some of our community members. It was really a bad deal for a little while, you know. And but what I had to in the documentary that was released, and if you guys want to write this down, if you guys have paper and pencil, the name of the film that was just released is called This Land: Access and Equity in Minnesota. It's not Minnesota, it's a Dakota word. Mani is water and Shota is gray looking. So the waters are grayish looking here. You're on Dakota homeland. And that's what we're talking about is the government of Minnesota wants Minnesotans to believe that only 2% of land is owned by women or people of color in Minnesota. That cannot be farther from the truth, because the way that the government wrote the treaties to begin with were null and void. And treaties, what I find fascinating sometimes when I really have to get into this, because this goes into the Indian Child Welfare Act, of where we had to ratify the injustice of them forcibly taking our children and enacting laws that were meant to, you know, use genocide to hopefully wipe us out. And if they couldn't wipe us out, then control us on the reservations and through programs like Indian relocation, the Dawes Act, all of these policies and procedures that they put in place. And so when I go back to remind individuals that treaties are not for Indigenous people, they're for the people enjoying our resources. And we're in a time when we see America being incredibly incompetent and fear mongering and telling women or people of color specifically that we're going to be rounded up under the new Project 2025, because if it gets uncomfortable, smudge. If it gets uncomfortable, take a break. But I go full board on this because I deal with my law enforcement officers. I'm dealing with ICE officials. I'm dealing with people that want to do this again. This is the same blueprint that they used in using. We understand that there was a humanitarian crisis when the border crashed, but we also understood that this was premeditated by the New World Order and the Freemasons that have long, the cabal that is falling in America right now. It is falling. And sometimes we need to push it over the edge. I'm okay with how I am. Haven't gone to jail yet today, but I understand freedom of speech and why we have to be very persistent at civil rights and humanitarian rights right now, because there are some individuals that absolutely think that they can annihilate us through propaganda and fear mongering to make us think that we are not in our clear mind and that we really don't understand the severity of Project 2025 and how they're trying to implement it in the reality that we're in today. And so with that being said, the treaties that we have, because we're in treaty negotiation, we're talking amongst ourselves in the state of Minnesota, along with North Dakota and Canada, amongst ourselves about how we're going to deal with the United States. How are we going to deal with it? Then I have to break that down, because I think that it's really imperative for people to recognize this is a really sad statement I'm getting ready to make, but it's reality in the world that I live in. 40% of Indigenous children born today are born addicted to fentanyl, meth, or heroin, or alcohol. 40%. And what I'm trying to do, well, what we have been successful in doing in developing our program, is that when these children are born, they are oftentimes undiagnosed. which means that there is no formal treatment for them and that they're supposed to meet American standards in elementary school and preschool and go through that educational system to achieve the American dream. That's not happening. It doesn't happen. It can't happen. When and here's another reality that I face is I live in Dilworth and I have an office in Moorhead, and I have an office on the Fargo side. I have moms in my program that have fetal alcohol syndrome, and they have 6 children born addicted to meth, fentanyl, or heroin. So their mental competency is already compromised, and now they're bringing children into this world, which is why we need the Indian Child Welfare Act off of the reservation, because the individuals in my community, there are a lot of people that maybe fear me because they see me on television telling people that have murdered Indigenous women that if you go to the police or law enforcement, will kill you. I had a press conference done in my office within an hour, and I told them to try and kill us. If you're going to shoot me, stab me, bring it now. Bring it here, because you got a lot of people that are supporting us. We have private security. Some of our tribes are making $29.4 billion a year, and we got trackers on our phone. We got trackers on our car. We have pepper spray. We have the right to self-defense and to defend ourselves when we are going to be facing the threat of self-harm or possible extinction because of the voice that needs to be spoken in truth without fear, because we're watching this the decline of the nation shift right now. And I have just as much heart for my non-Indigenous brothers and sisters, because nobody should die the way Emily Pike was murdered. If you guys know who Emily Pike was, write that name down. She was murdered in Globe, Arizona in March. She was in the custody of Department of Health and Human Services, which is why I don't have a bone to pick with them. I hold them accountable when they have Native children in their custody, just like I would be accountable if I had a Native child in my custody and all of a sudden she came up, murdered, and her head was chopped off and her hands were chopped off, and she was left in 2 garbage bags on the side of the road in the year 2025 in Globe, Arizona. Outrageous that this continues to happen. And so again, when I hold accountability, when I hold space, I can hold voice and I can bring affirmative action to the individuals that are a part of, whether they're DHS or CPS or even on our own reservations, our ICWA child welfare workers. I'll speak publicly about that, because that was something that came up back in February. We had Murdered Missing Indigenous March, and I got a call from a reservation, from the Leech Lake Reservation, and a community member called me and said the ICWA director, the Indian Child Welfare Director, just got placed on suspension for 72 hours because when he walked into the office, heroin fell out of his pocket. Now, what I try to tell people on reservations is you're no longer living in a little bubble, because we got Instagram, we got all this social media to put a light on the dysfunctionality that's even in Indigenous homelands, because that's not going to help our people. That is what's holding us back. And if that's going to hold our people back, then we're going to call it out into the light, and we're going to let the chips fall where they may. And I got on the horn, and nobody calls me back. I don't get a call back from the governor's office. I don't get a call back from the lieutenant governor. You're on your own. You got to find your voice. You got to find your people. But within a day, he was fired. And he is no longer their ICWA director, because he should not have had a slap on the hand. He's taking children away from parents because maybe they're on drugs, but he's under the influence of heroin. All of those cases are null and void. Are you kidding me? Like, but again, it's having the courage, because people are like, oh, our children are getting killed in schools. We have mass shootings in schools. You have the chances of somebody actually coming to find you to kill you versus I got to go to Walmart and hope there's not a shooting in the neighborhood today is real. Unfortunately, that's the real reality that we face in America, and it's not going to get any better for at least the next 20 years until we figure out who's going to really come to the top of what's happening in America today. And so, again, when I get referrals, and I may get them from courts, may call me and say, we have a situation with a parent, and I predominantly help women and children. There is another nonprofit, Indigenous and F5, that helps our male counterparts, but I have a safe home for women and children. And I've helped many that have stayed in my home and got them into better housing or whatever we need to do to transition them into stability. And so when I look at the referrals that come to me, I have to make a decision on what do I need to do an intervention. And I never go into a house alone. I always have either a staff member with me, a trained staff member, never ever go by ourselves, or we have standby law enforcement. And my police chief is like, here's my private number, because he thought he was going to get sued because I was done taking crap because they weren't doing their job. It's like you're quick to arrest us, but you're not quick to protect us. Don't victimize the victims. Like, we have to move through some of this stuff so that, people are really going to get the help that they need for whatever, situation they find themselves in. So when I get a referral and I go and I assess that situation, I have to see, for myself, is it something that we can intervene with? Does Indigenous legacy, are we capable of stepping in? It could be something as a mom is just having a really bad day and she's got too many kids and she's just can't do it. And the kids are making a mess of the house, and we'll go in and we'll bring food and supplies and we'll help with laundry and we'll get, the house back, just to say somebody stepped up today to help me out because I was having a bad day. We all need women like that, or men in our lives, family members in our lives. Sometimes I have to do an intervention, and I will give the mothers a choice if they are actively using substances. And the choice is, would you like to go to inpatient treatment? Would you like to go to outpatient treatment? Or do I get law enforcement involved because you are neglecting and abusing your children by actively using in the home? And we watch their children for free. I don't get welfare or food stamps. We are a self-supporting nonprofit. I have donors that are very gracious that buy diapers just on a monthly basis and drop off baby wipes and got us a Costco membership. And, people really support the mission of Indigenous legacy and the goals that we set for ourselves for meeting the standards of the individuals we're serving. And that is what I offer the individuals. And if they say, yes, I would like to go to outpatient treatment, immediately we're on the phone getting the phone call set up. We're doing transportation. We're following through with that end of it so that they can get the help that they need. And if they decide to go inpatient, I will watch their children. But then we have a transitioning period where they just can't take their children back because they get too overwhelmed and then they relapse. I see the cycle happen all the time. And then they don't have the skills yet. And remember, you're dealing with individuals that have FES or fetal alcohol withdrawal syndrome, is the ones that are born addicted to meth, fentanyl, and heroin today. It's known as fetal alcohol withdrawal syndrome. And oftentimes undiagnosed or misdiagnosed. It's not even, acknowledged, let alone actually having a care plan that will help them navigate through the different stages of development to give them the best coping mechanisms and the best resources that they can gather that will help them sustain themselves to being as self-sufficient and reliant as they can possibly be. And so when I have those situations, I have had one court case and we hired a lawyer, $320 an hour. And I went after custody of one of the mother's children. I reached out to family. We gave her every opportunity to get help for herself And the day that I was supposed to go take the child to the doctor to get the diagnosis because she was born addicted to meth, the mom actually barricaded herself in the house, literally boarded up the windows. And now, whether that's a side effect of being on the drugs or whatever, it doesn't matter. That is an offense. That is child abuse and child neglect. And I built a case and we put it before the prosecutor's office in Clay County, and they decided not to pursue the case. Again, nothing, my police chief and I worked diligently. He did his paperwork, I did mine, the lawyers did theirs. And yet the court systems fail us. And so when I call for those people to lose their jobs or they're incompetent to do their job, you bet we're going to go full board on that, because you're not helping my community. You're not doing anything for our children. I don't know why you're in the job. I don't know what you're doing, because you're sure representing what's in the best interest of the child under the Indian Child Welfare Act and what we could do. So then what we can do, what my police chief and I do, is we do weekly visits and making sure that the children are attending school. I do have that right to make sure that the children are attending school, going to the doctors, and maybe, and in this case, it really sent a message to that entire family that we are not going to just tolerate this dysfunctionality that people have learned to normalize, because it's not normal. If anybody does Al-Anon or recovery, I got 29 years of sobriety. June was 29 years of sobriety, and I sobered up at 25. I know a lot of Al-Anon, a lot of Alcoholics Anonymous, Red Road, whatever I could do to empower myself to gain these skills is what we have to do for ourselves. And so I've walked the talk. I'm not asking anything of them that I wouldn't ask of myself. And then, and so then I will follow that family. And sometimes we just show up with groceries. We go to Aldi's, we buy all fresh vegetables, we make sure that the basics are met, and we'll drop them off. I don't need to have a personal interchange with that family member, but I need to make sure that those kids are well cared for. If they're not going to be removed from that family, we have to still make sure that those kids are getting at least the bare basics of what they deserve to have, with healthy food and toothpaste, toothbrush, winter jackets. I had to learn to take the tags off the jackets so the parents wouldn't return the merchandise for money and use it for drugs. I have to learn all kinds of stuff, take them to the gas station, put gas in the car, and not, because we don't want to enable. If anybody walks away from here tonight, I myself have had to do some real deep down soul searching. What's the difference between enabling and lending a hand up? Because there is a difference. And America's at a point where they want to cut off food stamps. They want to cut off the SNAP benefits. They want to cut off heat assistance. And you're going to see real suffering then. Or people are going to have to get real humble and pick priorities wisely in order to continue to exist in where America is heading to as a nation right now. And then once a mom, and that's all volunteer. It's all a volunteer program. 2 moms that I'm working with right now, I was kind of tooting her horn, because last week, 2 of the moms, in the last 2 weeks, 2 of the moms have both gotten their driver's license. They had, I know, we were like, just praise God. It all comes from the Great Spirit. I'm like so ecstatic, but they had fines that they couldn't pay off. And we joined forces with the Family Resource Center. I'm on the board, the core team for the Family Resource Center. They have flex funding that we don't tell a lot of people, but they have $2,000 per family, not for rent, but for personal goal setting. What is it that they need to work on that's a barrier to them becoming self-sufficient, if they're capable of being self-sufficient? Some may never be able to drive. And then, I tell them, you can't be, going and getting picked up because you borrowed your cousin's car and you're putting yourself and your children in jeopardy. They don't necessarily have the common sense, or they've, just kind of that sense of entitlement. Well, I'll do what I want anyways. Well, there's consequences for things. And unfortunately, if you get in enough trouble, they're going to take your kids away. And then it's a real struggle to help do reunification of those families. And so it's critical that they meet with us. The moms that I meet with come to my office, and we meet as many times a week. I'm here. This is my life, Monday through Sunday. We have a sweat lodge. So I have people at my house, and they're bringing their kids. And when I do need my own private time, I'm just like, I'm taking 2 days, phones off. I need to go down and take care of myself so I can come back up with a breath of fresh air. They always tease me. They say my name should be She Talks a Lot instead of To Be Sweet Like the Water Woman. But words are medicine, and words are encouragement, and even constructive criticism, giving that constructive criticism that they might need to realize that some of these behaviors or some of these patterns that we've fallen into are unhealthy. And then role modeling and having our program, which is 4 stages. So when people come into Indigenous Legacy, the first stage is crisis stage. That's usually how they come to me. They're homeless shelter or domestic violence. Something is triggered an episode to happen where they've reached out to me. They stay in the crisis part of our program for 6 months, and we're goal setting that whole time. Because if you're a domestic violence survivor and you have battered women syndrome, you need mental health help. You need to be going to psychology appointments. You need, if you're religious and you want to start a church, a faith-based program, more power to them. The sweat lodge is not the only way to pray, but it is a way to pray. And if they want to go to ceremony, whether it be mine or somebody else's, that they have access to that so that their spiritual health is staying well, so that they can get healed from the trauma of whatever has sparked that incident that they've had. And so it's very goal oriented in those first 6 months, going to doctor's appointments. We drive to Indian Health Services, which is at IHS, which is 1 hour from here. And I do that once a month, year round. I've been doing that for 3 years. And so we get dental appointments taken care of, eye exams, well child exams, just all kinds of neat stuff that we can do through Indian Health Services because they are free for tribal enrolled members and our descendants. And so once we get through the crisis phase, which is the first 6 months of programming, then we go to the second phase, which is more self-sufficiency. I go into their homes with them, and we have a very specific schedule. What day are we going to do laundry on? How much money does it take to do laundry? Do you have, adequate food in the house? Do you have, adequate supplies in the house? These are people who are often transient sometimes. They've lived in homeless shelters. Even as Indigenous people, a lot of times people are like, how come you guys all live together? We're intergenerational. It's not uncommon to see. I have 17 grandchildren. 2 of my granddaughters just went back to Rapid City for the summer, but they were home for the summer staying with me. And then they went back to their other Kunchi and Lala, their other grandfather and grandmother. But we live intergenerationally so that they can see a role model. They can see that there's a way that we treat the elders and that we don't spank the children. You can discipline the children by giving them extra chores and teaching them time out, age appropriate, which is parenting classes, traditional parenting classes that we also give in stage 2 so that they develop that ability to parent healthily and not do it through, spanking or yelling. A lot of, people are like, why do you, when I was younger, people would be, why are you yelling? And I'm like, oh, am I yelling? Because it became so normal. We yell because we're fearful. We're afraid of something. And so when I'm fearful, my fear comes out in a higher tone. And I remember one mom, she was getting milk out of the fridge and she spilt the milk and she hollered. And I looked and I realized that's a trigger response because maybe she doesn't have more money to go get milk. That's a trigger response. I was like, wow. And we cleaned it up and I went and got some more milk and I brought it back and it was okay. And that's the heart of what we do when we're teachers or the individuals that we're working on being, to be a better sister or a better community member, to our relatives and to our community members. The third stage, which they should hit by 1 year, we go into the third stage. That's where, again, like the two moms that I have now gotten their driver's license. Now we're going to move them to getting their own vehicle and learning how to budget to pay car insurance, car expenses. And if they feel like they're going to be impulsive and maybe, oh, I'll just take off to the res for the weekend and not tell anybody, there are consequences for that too. We have to hold them accountable, because what happens is there's an instability that becomes created, and that's not going to help. Are there times that they can do that? Absolutely. But that's when they have enough funding to do it, enough time off from work. We know that they're safe and where they're going and when they're going to be back, because we want a support system that's safe for all of us right now. Human trafficking is real. If Emily Pike can be killed in Globe, Arizona in March of 2025 in this country, we got some serious issues, folks, serious issues. And we are not just living in our own little bubbles. We have to have situational awareness, and we have to be aware at all times. And I ask that of the moms when they go, just, and if they don't, if they need to just take a day or two away from the program, that's completely fine. But verbalize to us what those expectations are, so that we know when they're coming back, so that their schedules and their routines don't get disrupted, which goes again into inconsistency. And then the fourth stage is getting where what we would like to see in Indigenous legacy is we are actually going after some funding right now to hire the moms. To do childcare for us through the Family Resource Center. They have some funding available. So when we're holding classes in our office, we have a conference room, and then we have like a child care area. And right now, my teenage granddaughters would watch the children, so the moms and I could take care of the business that we have to do one-on-one. But we do have funding coming in that's going to allow for paying for people to get paid to watch the children and to interact with them, working on vocabulary, working on reading, writing. All the moms in my program breastfeed, and they're also teaching sign language to the children, which is really cool to see. And so, again, that fourth level is getting them to a place where, and America is at a place where, if you've had like a felony drug conviction, you're not getting help from anything. You're kicked off everything. Well, how are we supposed to put them back in the workforce? And who wants to go work for $14 an hour? Because you ain't going to make it on 14. If you ain't making 20, you ain't making it. They got to have a livable wage. And that's what we're advocating for. And I'm the sole grant writer for Indigenous Legacy. And I want to give an acknowledgement to Essentia Healthcare. Last year, we applied for a transportation grant of $7,000 and was awarded the entire $7,000. And that was just for gas money to go to appointments and car repairs. And we just put in another round of funding because, July was the new fiscal year. And so I try to hit these grants, right? Hit these pockets where we're self-sustaining ourselves. We did a fry bread taco fundraiser. We made $650. The moms each got $325. I let them keep the whole thing. And they help put that towards their reinstatement fees, as well as what the Family Resource Center put in. So they have to invest in this program. There is no freebie in any of this. And if they can, if they can stay in there with it, I just see their confidence and their self-esteem rise. The children are happy. I walk through the door and right away arms go up and, oh, Kukum is here. Kukum is Chippewa for grandma. Oh, grandma's here. And she's, whatever it is that we're off to do that evening, or just, staying in the home and creating a home-like atmosphere for them. And that's going to help us to eliminate the need for CPS or DHS to come in and have to investigate our Indigenous families or our Indigenous women with children, so that we can be adamant about how child rearing is done and our expectations that we have for ourselves in our program. I'm going to just take a little bit of a break so I can get something to drink here, but I'm going to stop for a minute because I know it's a lot out there, a lot comes at you at one time, but let's take a minute. If anybody has any questions, if you guys have something that has sparked, maybe you were apprehensive about, yeah, we see a lot of bad stuff going down, but how do we find solidarity in it, right? Not everybody wants Project 2025. I'm telling you. And ICE isn't going to be able to pull it off because whites are a minority by 2050. Mexicans are having 2.5 children. You're a minority in your own country in the next 25 years. I say that so that we can get conversation, right? We got to deal in real reality right now and put race aside to see the humanitarian needs that people need to have until we see mass death and suffering like my people have seen previously on American soil. And we weren't the only ones, right? And I know, and I've even I remember meeting a gentleman, and his grandmother was brought here as a slave. She was a white young woman and brought into North Dakota and was a slave. And, unfortunately was impregnated at 15. Women didn't have a life expectancy, gave birth to his mom, who gave birth to him. And it blew his mind that white people were slaves in America that were brought here, and they were lower economic class. And she was a slave on a farm. And so it doesn't know culture, right? This, whatever it is, it doesn't know what that is. It just knows that it needs to have that control and dominance to fear us into doing as the puppets would like us to be on a string. Well, that just doesn't work. It just doesn't happen. But I'll stop for a second. And but if anybody has anything that they would like to say or share at this time, I would encourage you to do that. So.
If you want to ask Christy questions or just share some thoughts you've had as you've listened to her, please just unmute and go ahead and do so. Alternatively, you can put it in the chat and I'll read it out.
Christy, it
Patty.
sounds like you're doing so much on your own and your organization is young. I'm going to guess that I can find a website later to look and learn more. Is there a donate now button also there?
I'm going to put, let me, so cultural diversity resources. I'll put an address in here.
Okay.
For if you want to send us a donation, we're more than happy to accept donations. So let me put that in. And then, so one of the ways that we really leveraged ourselves as nonprofits is cultural diversity resources. When COVID hit, we were like, what do we do? Right? Everything was shutting down. We're like, God, how do we stay alive? How do we stay afloat? Is it time to close shop, or is it time to move on? What we did was Yoaxim Goodnaratne went after AmeriCorps Vista positions, and lo and behold, got it, and was able to hire like a social media. We have a youth program developer. We have a senior support specialist coming on staff. We have a fund develop coordinator coming on staff. So her genius mind went after that. And then Cultural Diversity Resources gave us a year in our office. So the office I'm in now paid for a year, gave us internet, gave us the printer. And she said, I believe in you, and you do what you do every day. And don't worry about anything else. We'll take care of those things. So any donations that come in go towards the diapers. They go towards, the needs that the moms need in order, to just be able to have a quality of life that they deserve to have.
So did Indigenous legacy emerge out of cultural diversity resources?
Yes.
Okay, so you're are you like honing in specifically then on, it sounds like moms and children, the work you're doing?
Right. Yep. And so Cultural Diversity Resources is my fiscal agent, and we're going to keep it that way because I don't have time for the accountant. I got a million things on my plate.
Got it. Yep.
Done. And I'm like, brilliant. And we've just been, like I said, Cultural Diversity Resources won Nonprofit of the Year. So when you go into the Cultural Diversity website, Cultural Diversity Resources website, which I'm going to put in here,
Okay.
you'll see multicultural ethnic program, and then you click on it, you'll see Indigenous legacy and so we have a social media coordinator who does all that for me. I tell her when we have events coming up, classes, we do financial management, entrepreneurship classes, So she does all that for us. Her name is Julia Schott. And so Julia is doing that. So we leveraged our resources because we don't need to reinvent the wheel. All the programs are out there, whether they're dealing with homeless, substance abuse, domestic violence, the rape and abuse crisis, everything's already there. We just need to be an intermediary bridge to kind of put our people in the right direction for the resources that they need to have, so that they're getting the help that they deserve. At the end of the day, they're looking for the help that they deserve.
Yeah.
Christy, can I interrupt you just a second? And if I'm writing a check, who is it exactly that I make it out to so it goes to your group?
Right. So you can make it out to Indigenous Legacy. Yep. So actually, let's do Cultural Diversity Resources because they are a fiscal agent. And so I'm going to put that, my information is Indigenous Legacy. I'm at 3505 8th Street South, and we're number 7 in Moorhead, Minnesota.
And you're putting it in the chat?
I'm doing that right now.
Perfect. Thank you.
And then and Cultural Diversity Resources, we're in the same office. And so I'm going to put up our information for that. And it's culturaldiversityresources.org. And it's the same address, the 3505 8th Street South, number 7 in Moorhead, Minnesota. So Cultural Diversity Resources, and the name of the website is culturaldiversityresources.org.
Good.
And then
what's the zip there? What's the zip where you are in Moorhead?
56560.
56560. Okay.
Right. So I put culturaldiversityresources.org. So if you go onto that, you'll come into our website and you can find Indigenous Legacy on there. And then our physical location on the Minnesota side is the 3505. And we also have a group of women. I had a situation happen a couple of weeks ago where I got a call from one of the moms in my program, and it was 9 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. We were actually supposed to go to Buffalo River State Park and do a nature walk and take kids fishing. I took some of our youth group and we did hunter safety courses. Some of our young men, we actually just got our hunter safety certificate. I did too, a couple months back. And then I went and bought fishing license and fishing poles and said, we got to get out. We got to be out in nature. We got to enjoy, this time that we have. But anyways, I get a phone call from the mom. She's visibly upset. She's crying. The guy has been, up in her face, pushing on her. And she will not call 911. She will not. I get there and he was already gone. And I asked her if she would come home with me, because then I can get them into like the YWCA or into one of the shelters, or keep them with me. And the police put extra protection on my house. So when I call my police chief and I say I have a situation where there is an individual who is threatening one of the females, they will automatically put extra police cars on my block. I'm only two blocks away from the Dilworth Police Department, and I have my police chief's private number, and he will automatically dispatch to come and circle to make sure that we are safe. Anyways, they end up talking and they decide that they're going to work it out. Well, 2 more days go by and she calls me, and again, she's in tears, and I show up and law enforcement comes with me and he's gone. And I said, okay, you need to come now. You cannot stay in this home any longer. You are, I cannot, I'm a mandated reporter. I have to make a report, whether, you know, you like it or not. I tell them all that up front because I'm the one telling you too, if you have a substance use disorder or a mental health issue, we have to address it. We have to get help. And so she came home with me. We brought her to the YWCA for the weekend. And I don't mean to bash other nonprofits, but it was the worst experience I've ever seen. And what outrages me is they get millions of dollars. I brought her in on a Friday at 3:00 and I stayed with her until they took her back and brought her into a private apartment. Nobody came for her. There was no advocate on staff. The next morning she woke up and she called me because I called her that night to check on her. Because I offered for her to stay at my house, but she's like, maybe he might come here and hurt you. And she didn't want that to happen. I said, don't worry, he ain't going to hurt me because, you know, I do have the right to carry and conceal. I am a gun owner. And I do because I also fish and hunt. You know, I live a traditional lifestyle. And if need be, I will defend myself. That is my right. We know how to care for guns around children. I was on the governor's board for a crisis intervention team for the state of Minnesota. I was one of the 13 chosen after FBI background check. So we know very well what we're doing. But anyways, she calls me the next morning and she said, there's no food here. And I'm like, what do you mean there's no food? Had we released those pictures to the public, they probably should have shut down the YWCA. Outrageous. I went and picked her up. I took her to Walmart. We bought her a bunch of groceries. I took her to my house and we barbecued. And the kids played in the splash pad and the kids played in the pool. And the mom's, she was more comfortable the second day. And, you know, we took care of things. She saw the police cars coming by, checking on us. She knew things were good. I brought her back to the shelter. Still no domestic violence advocate came for her. Sunday rolls around. Still no domestic violence advocate. Monday rolls around. She said, I want to leave. I'm ready to go back home. And I said, okay, I can't tell her no. Still no domestic violence advocate came to help her. What the heck? I was just like, I'm like, so we're going to do it. We're going to do this ourselves. We're going to build these houses and these homes, and we're going to make sure that you will not be by yourself or without food or resources. And I went and got her. I had police come with me back to her house, sat both of them down and said, if there is a domestic, and he was told, you are going to jail immediately. Do not lay hands on her or you will be taken. You're just gone. And I had 4 police officers actually with me. So he knew I wasn't messing around. He knew I was serious. And I relayed to her the importance of getting help at Rape and Abuse Crisis Center because she will not call the police. She will not call the police. And that's part of our historical trauma with, you know, the government in the past is we've seen them fail us. We've even seen our own people fail us. So I don't have an opportunity to fail my people. I eat this. I live and breathe what God has put me on the earth to do, my calling in life, so that we can help avoid less, because her sister was murdered by her husband. He's serving life in prison for it. And she's raising that child. And, you know, and at some point, you know, we in a society have to say, you know, we know that we can make these changes by being committed and not being afraid. And if I had to leave my home, I do have other places in other cities with other individuals that would take us in if we ever feared for our life. We've already set that up for ourselves so that we could be safe at all times if need be. And that's what money could help us too, is if we had to have a hotel room or something like that, that we need to have enough funding on hand that if we felt that we were in jeopardy by whatever, you know, force that may be, that we would have those resources to make sure that we were safe for the evening or for, you know, the days that we have to. But I did intervene, and I sat down with both of them, and that was about 3 weeks ago. And nothing has happened since. He is actually getting mental health help. He is going to recovery meetings. And he came out and shook my hand last week. And we're talking a guy that's 6'4", did 12 years in prison. And he was an enforcer in prison, about 220 pounds, almost crying, shaking my hand, and said, I'm sorry. Thank you for what you do. That's all I ask, is let's have a little respect amongst ourselves. And I'm like, God, where? I know there's a great spirit. I'm like, I'm not on a death wish. I'm not on a suicide mission, but we are on a humanitarian mission. We are on a mission for just basic humanitarian rights and goodness that we have to stay connected to and be diligent to serving, so that we can empower the next generation of young women who don't have to be sexually assaulted or physically harmed, regardless of color. I don't care what color they are. Nobody should have to endure this. And then heal, because that's why I'm here tonight. I want to thank you for inviting me to come on tonight. I want to thank you for believing in the work that I do. A lot of people think it's just wonderful being on the news telling drug dealers, hey, if you're really going to threaten us, if we go to the police or media, you're going to kill us. Well, I'm right here doing a press conference. There's nothing glorifying about that, but it's work that needs to be done. And government is from the people up. It's not from government down. If we haven't noticed, there is no government left. Minnesota's in a horrible shape right now, and it's going to be redefined. And we have to put ourselves, center yourself with your beliefs and your spiritual beliefs or your ideology is, and then carry that forward, so that there's somebody there to rely on, as we all need, as being a human family, we have to do these things for ourselves. So,
Christy, what is one thing besides donating and supporting the work you're doing that people could do who aren't necessarily connected like you are to Indigenous communities who are struggling with these issues, but what would be helpful for individuals in the community to do? How can they support people who are
I
trying
really
to
think, right. That's a great question. I really want you to take Project 2025 seriously. I read the manifesto for Project 2025 4 years ago. And people are like, what? We didn't know it existed. Oh, yeah. This stuff's been working on. And some of the stuff that they're feeding you right now, the veil's coming off. And this country was sold a long time ago. And there's a lot of people in this country that believe America is their new homeland, which I get, but you're still on Indigenous homeland. You're not, America might be in whatever, but us Indigenous people, we're still talking amongst ourselves to retain the value of who we are on our own homelands. And I want people to do your due diligence of your homework, to not believe some of the false narratives that are being pushed upon us right now, that are absolutely ludicrous, and then find solidarity in having an opportunity to stay connected to the work that Indigenous Legacy is doing. We'll be hosting a racial equity collaborative on October 10th here in Moorhead, and it's called Weaving a Wider Community. And I'm one of the co-hosts for that. And you can follow us on our social media site at culturaldiversityresources.org. And talk amongst yourselves, really bond amongst yourselves. It's okay to agree to disagree. But at the end of the day, sometimes we have to sit back and say maybe some of the things that we were taught to mislead us and to not give us equality, whether as women or as a human being, and being true to yourself for that. And it's a very hard process to decolonize and de-urbanize your thinking, but it's imperative. As we're all moving forward in whatever shape America is going to take, whatever path it's going to take. And that would be my greatest suggestion to all of you that attended tonight, is really do your due diligence on finding truth in who your local leaders are, or who your, I look at the state of Minnesota, and, I have to bring this up. When the lawmaker was killed in St. Paul, Think of that. She was killed by a white man who dressed like a police officer and put a ski mask on and shot her at 3 o'clock in the morning. That's crazy. And when I have to look at Western America and look at that and say they're obviously in crisis, then who do I have to trust on a local level? Or who am I going to hold accountable on a local level when things start falling through the cracks because they want to put more emphasis on a $70 billion ICE and a new army in America versus we already have enough money. We're not broke, like they say. There's plenty of money to go around. They just want to swoop it up for a new military, and let's gut everything else that America has worked for. And that's why we're in the situation of young people being told the truth so that they can make informed decisions for themselves on what it is that they feel that they have to advocate for or stand for in their own belief system on their own soil here in the United States. So that's what I would suggest.
Christy, I want you to know that everyone on this call, I know everybody, every single one, what you say resonates completely with them. They all agree with you. So it's wonderful. What other questions do we have for Christy? Maybe questions you've always wanted to ask.
Right. Indigenous. I can't generalize. My situation, like, I'll give you a little history on the cultural part of why I can speak on Indian Child Welfare Act. I don't have to be a tribal council member. I don't have to be voted in to be Indigenous. I was born full blood. Both my parents, Goulet, obviously, like Robert Goulet, it's a French name. When the French came into Canada, with the Hudson Fur Trade Company and the Northwest Fur Trading Company, they mated with the Cree and Chippewa women. And that's how my bloodline came into existence. But both of my grandparents and my parents are Indigenous. And I come from Chief Little Shell. When Little Shell was in power, when he was in his position, they came to us with what was known as the 10-cent treaty. And they wanted to give us 10 cents for every acre of land. And we didn't have guns and we didn't have horses. And I'm like, crap, we got casinos today. We're making $29.4 billion. It doesn't mean I got the money, but at least we got infrastructure today. At least there's some revenue coming in here somewhere. Maybe Great Spirit will see whatever. I believe the Spirit gives you what you're supposed to handle. But anyways, Little Shell told the other chiefs, we will not accept it. He said, you can't sell what you don't own. And he took his wife and immediate family and they went into Montana, where they're federally recognized today. And so when I speak on what gives me authority to speak on it, is we go through ceremonial rite of passage. And I don't know how many of you have ever heard of a Sundance before, or if I've Sundance for 18 years and I became head woman Sundancer for the last 5 years. So I go 4 nights and 5 days with no food or water. And I do 10 sweat lodges in 5 days. These are not for the faint of heart. I'm like, Great Spirit, you got to be kidding me. I'm 55 now. It's like I've earned my place because I went, not only did I Sundance for 18 years, but I vision quested 7 times. So I've been left in the Black Hills with no food or water. And I fasted and prayed. The longest I'm allowed to go is 4 nights and 5 days. And I've accomplished the entire thing, never quit. And the least amount of time is 1 night and 1 day. I have to speak in the language. The spirits don't understand English. So our ancestors, and I speak 5 indigenous languages. I speak Cree, Chippewa, Lakota, Dakota, Nakota, and I speak English. And then I run a sweat lodge today. And so I actually bought Ojibwe land back in Dilworth. I'm still paying on the mortgage, but I have land that I bought 10 years ago. And how Indigenous Legacy came was also part of that vision. They said, if you could help, women and children, or if you could be of service, what's the best way to do that? And opening your home sometimes, but you got to have a plan of how you're going to help them move to the next spot. You can't just, maybe sometimes they can't. I look at CHI Friendship, Catholic Health Care Initiatives. They set up a wonderful program to help vulnerable adults or adults with disabilities, intellectual disabilities. and they take them to work and they help them in their apartments. Indigenous legacy can reach that same capacity. I believe that that's going to happen in my lifetime. I'm going to make sure it tries to happen in my lifetime with continued funding, proper training, putting people in their role. Maybe some people don't like to be in front of the camera. Maybe they want to be hanging with the kids. Everybody's got their own little niche that they have, and it's finding out what they're best at, and then maybe challenge them sometimes, and they could take on a little bit more. And so we look at the goal of Indigenous legacy, the mission statement that we have, and living up to that mission statement to helping in that way. So I hope that answered part of your question. But so that's why, again, off reservation, I have tribal chair people call me. I have people from reservations call me. They might have a situation where they have to relocate somebody. We were never afforded witness protection. That doesn't happen. Where's witness protection for Native people? I even had my police chief ask me, do you want to be a confidential informant? And I said, there's nothing confidential about what I do. I want people to know where I stand on drug issues, child abuse issues, sexual abuse issues, domestic violence issues. I'm 55 years old. I've never been to jail, never been arrested. I'm going to stand for these beliefs, and we need to gain traction in how we are helping ourselves right now. And so I hope that answers your question about, why I feel that I have the right to speak on doing the things that I do today for the betterment of Indigenous legacy in our community.
Christy, this is probably silly to ask.
No.
Has your life been threatened? It sounds like a very
multiple times.
Dangerous work. Okay.
Oh, we're not talking my life threatened. I've had tires slashed. We've had windows broken out. Death threats, you name it. It's come. And I still get up and do it. I still will hold a press conference in my office and tell them, I don't really care, because you're giving them that power, whoever they are, because they realize, hey, whoa. There's a lot of people that are going to stand up, that we don't have to tolerate that being threatened or being ostracized or harassed on my own homeland. I bought land back. We started this nonprofit. We're doing our diligence to what we need to do, and we're not going to be threatened by anybody, because I believe in the power of God. I believe that the devil can't bring anything on us that's negative, because you're giving that to the devil. I give it to God and the protection of a creator who will put that protection on us, who will help guide us and give us signs, whether it's an eagle flying over or leaving there's always a sign from the creator that you're doing the right thing. And the right things are often the hardest things to be doing. The right choices are often the hardest ones to make in life. They come with a lot of internal turmoil, and I've made sacrifices, but that's God's grace, right? What does grace mean? Is doing something greater than yourself in order to have God bless you with grace. And so I kind of go back into some spiritual teachings on that. Because that's where I'm not running. There's nowhere for me to run. They can hit the bricks. They can figure it out for themselves. And like I said, we do have the right to carry and conceal. I had a woman call me today from Bismarck, and she's like, I've never been more scared in my life. I'm like, do you got your pepper spray or mace? She's like, no. I said, order it immediately. Put one on your car keychain. What are you waiting for? Why? And you got to have some common sense in where we're living in this world today, so that we are really, it's self-defense. You got to practice self-defense and situational awareness. And that's, again, why we're very specific about things that we do. And the people, like my neighbors, all know what I do. And I'm like, you better hope that they don't mistake your house for mine and shoot your house instead of mine. And they're like, nope, because they're mostly gun owners too. You're living in Minnesota, they all hunt, and they're like, nope, we got you. We'll make sure that you're going to be okay. That's what you do in your community. That's how you start getting affirmative action going, where they're like, no, we'll take our neighborhoods back. We'll stand up for ourselves. That's what Dr. Martin Luther King had to do at Selma. And if it wasn't for video recorders and the media, they'd still be beating them up. But because they finally got on video, and we had technology that shed the light on the atrocities that America was still trying to do to Black people. That's why that happened. And they could no longer do that. Go beat up on your own people, but don't beat up on mine. Like, leave me alone. And so again, yes, I've had all of it, and I understand it all, and I try to use situational awareness and self-defense when possible, and just good, common sense for things, and just be diligent and believe that Creator is, and if I was meant to die that way, but at least I died with conviction, because I often tell my children, conviction and complacency don't live in the same home. And I'm sure you women can agree. Conviction and complacency do not live in the same home for very long. And it's all right to have that conviction. And in Ojibwe, we say aning. It's a traditional greeting. And what it means is I see your light. It means I see your aura. And sometimes people's auras are real small. They're light, maybe whatever has happened. But and the only thing that's going to help that is love and compassion, empathy. Right? The real values that we can amplify, whether you're Judeo-Christian, a Buddhist, traditional indigenous person. And I pray for my enemies, but I also know that, they're not here to keep, keep my life safe. I'm sure there's a lot of them that would like me to shut up. Ain't gonna happen. Hasn't happened yet. We have to speak truth, and we have to bring light to the truth. But thank you for asking that question, because that's just how we do it right now. There's no other greater answers than using local law enforcement. My neighbors come over. We see on the news. Thank you for the good work you do. And then they know to watch in case something sketchy is going on, or people, we've lived in the same neighborhood for 10 years. We know who comes around the neighborhood, or, if something doesn't look right, use your intuition, use your feelings for things. And try not to, it's hard because Minnesota nice. We want to pull over and help somebody who's changing a tire. But this is a weird time we're living in. Just weird,
Yes.
And we got to use caution, and you got to use a lot of common sense right now. So miigwech for asking that.
Well, I've just got to say you're remarkable. Thank you so much for doing this and telling your stories tonight. I'm so glad to be able to learn what I've learned already.
Miigwech, Patty. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's. I was really looking forward. I was like, got up this morning, and I'm like, because I was told by my elders, reach one, teach one, and we talked a little about that, right, Renee, before getting on tonight about I don't need 100 people on here. I would rather reach one, teach one, because it's about quality. It's not about quantity. It's about the quality of what I'm trying to, change for the betterment of things. And if you look throughout history, look at Ruth in the Bible, what a tremendous woman she was, and how she helped other women, and she treated them like sisters, and really, and sometimes it's hard to be the big sister, and sometimes, I'm still 55 and my elders are like, you just settle down now. We know you know a lot, but you got more to learn and more to do. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so I try to walk with a happy heart, just knowing that I did the best I could today, and the Lord is amazing and will always put blessings on us.
Christy, it's been an amazing experience to listen to you chat about everything you're doing. I want to let people know that next in September, so our next Taking Action speaker series is going to feature Jennifer Campo, who is Christy's niece, and
she's my cousin.
She's going to talk about recovery.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
another story of person, well, from a more personal take about what it means to come through this process and find yourself. Yeah. So it's going to be a wonderful experience too.
Absolutely.
What other questions might people have for Christy? Or if not, we can end a little early too. I have this till 8:30, but
okay, I have one.
Yeah.
Yes, Lori.
Yeah.
So you're helping. I know you can't do everything for everybody, and you're helping women and girls. What about little boys?
In our culture, I have 17 grandchildren, and our young men that grew up in my home. Like I said, I never spanked a grandchild.
Mhm.
And my boys, we don't genderize our children until the age of 7. So my boys had to
Okay.
learn how to bead and sew and do
I love
dishes.
that.
And my girls need to know how to like cut wood and change a tire and do these other things. And very seldom did we have a wink day, which would be a two-spirit. Very seldom did we
Mhm.
have them. And but the men are very much a part. So when we do like we did moccasin making, and the families all came in together. The fishing, everybody's invited to go fishing. We had a powwow and they made regalia for the new
Mhm.
children. Two of the babies got to dance, and all the youth came, the young men came with. So they are very much included in what we do. But I refer, for men's support groups, we don't have a man on staff, but I refer them to mental health help or recovery programs or to
Mhm.
men's sweat lodges. And so they do get valuable information. And like I said, and then we had to deal with like a trespass, and
Yeah.
only time's going to fix that relationship. They got to show me, through behavioral changes, that what they're serious about. And then if I see that change, we'll lift that trespass on that individual. But until that happens, things have to stay in place. And so again, it's being delicate to what those needs are, to helping our young men. But I think one of the greatest gifts, the 2 young men that we took and we did the hunter safety course on, got the highest scores out of the class. That we had a 50 question quiz, and one of them only got 2 wrong. And
Wow.
outstanding. And it teaches them the difference between self-sufficiency and violence. In inner city, it's easy to see gang violence or this violence that's every day. But over here on our indigenous teachings, we always had weapons for self-survival, to hunt and to do what we needed to do in order to have clean food sources, and in order for us to be self-sufficient in land-based education, which is what I teach as well. It's all land-based education outside of the office, gardening, medicines, ceremonies, learning the nature, all the things that we can do. And so there is room in our programs for these young men. Obviously, we can't exclude them. And then really finding good role models. And so when I coordinate, I collaborate with other leaders of other communities. And when I know like a drum group is coming in, I'll make a dinner and have it at my house or at the office. And then they'll bring the drum group. And then they can all sit around and learn. They even made drums like last summer. The young men made drums. We got enough money and for supplies, and they all made drums, hand drums. And that was a good bonding experience for elders to be put together with a young male. So that because a lot of the women we're serving are single moms. Look at the incarceration rate in Minnesota. We're the leading incarcerated rate in Minnesota. And that's due to the pipeline school. It's called school to prison pipeline. And because, Western schools don't teach you to work for yourself. They teach you to work for the New World Order, the cabal. It takes 40% of your taxes and you're left with 60% and try and figure that one out. And so again, it's breaking that policies and procedures that the government put in place, because these were all private owned institutions. Prisons are privately owned in America. So are the new detention facilities. That's where they make money. And then you got everybody else that came on board, DHS and everybody else, and let's all keep them poor, and let's all keep them, can't get too, economically wealthy. Otherwise, there's consequences for that. Well, sorry to tell you, but we're holding our own, and so far so good. And that's all. I want to be humble before the Creator with that, because so far so good. So
good for you.
Miigwech, thank you.
Well, I think that at this point we can wrap it up, but I want to say miigwech to Christy for coming and sharing her story. Thank you so much. I will be posting the video from this. In fact, I'm going to turn the video off right now. Let's see.
Can you hear me? My Zoom went crazy here.
I can
Yes,
hear you.
we can hear you.
Okay, I'm trying to click on my